This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, true seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road Jack, Finding the Zodiac. I'd like to welcome to the show today, Harriet Suchet.
Good morning.
I felt like cat in a hat there. It almost rhymed. Let's welcome to the show today, Harriet Suchet.
Okay, in my hat too. But anyways.
I know Nolan said he was going to be here, although I did have a good conversation with him yesterday in regards to the follow-up we're going to discuss. So if Nolan comes in, we'll introduce him to the show at that point. He did say he'd be here, but I'm actually leaving off on last week's follow-up with the Tim Miller situation and the Texas killing fields. So I wanted to kind of just recap the docuseries that I saw with Tim Miller in regards to the different suspects and victims, because it actually yielded some good information. It helped to actually take a couple murders off the books. So I'm just going to briefly go through that, and then we're going to climb right back into the follow-up for the Peter Wilson wrongful conviction, because that got exponentially more interesting.
I have some updates for you too for that case.
Yay!
Okay.
Yay! All right. Well, so let me get through this real quick, and then we're gonna hop right into that. So on the it's on Netflix, and it's Crime Scene: The Texas Killing Fields in Galveston, League City, Dickinson, and I-45 Killer. So basically on Calder Road, on an oil field, as Harriet had stated, I believe you said that you thought that was a former Phillips 66 station.
Yeah, that was a former Phillips 66 pump jack station. So when I started decoding that, I said, once I saw that, Jack has got some information. That's what I was seeing.
Pump jack. Okay.
Yes.
So basically, the bodies were laid out under trees as if they were posed. And that's something that we've talked a lot about in regards to Black Dahlia, the Oakland County child killer cases, like these bodies being out in the open and posed in a certain manner. So this actually set the MO of this particular killer for the killing fields, aside from who we're going to hear further in what they talk about on this documentary. So one of the suspects was Clyde Hedrick, and that is the one that Tim Miller actually sued for a wrongful death, even though Clyde Hedrick had only been associated with, I think it was abuse of a corpse, and that was in regards to Ellen Beeson. He supposedly had gone to the bar and they'd hung out. And then after that, they went to go swimming. And of course, he says that he looks into the water and there she is floating. He doesn't know what to do with her. He picks her up. He's going to take her to the hospital, but then he gets scared and he ends up dumping her in a field underneath a couch and some tires. So that is what ultimately gets him in trouble for that. I think that they did actually exhume that body and determine that there was a blow to the head that could not have happened if she had just dove in the water. So almost as if to say that he had hit her with something. But again, we won't know the truth of any of that. So the victims were in the Texas killing fields. The victims were Heidi Villarreal Fye, and she went missing October 1983, found April 6, 1984, because a dog had brought back a skull to its owner. Victim number 2, which is Jane Doe, we now actually have names. I've been waiting all these years for names, or for them to finally figure out who Jane Doe and Janet Doe is from these series, and we have their names now. So Jane Doe, found 1986, was they found a .22 caliber bullet lodged in her spine. Her name is Audrey Lee Cook, and she's 30 years of age. They did actually find a blue plaid shirt, as I had indicated before. That's probably missing. I think that's what it said. I've typed it up as it's missing now. So this shirt used to exist, but of course, no DNA testing can be done on it because now that we have the technology, the shirt is gone. Victim number 3 was Laura Miller. She went missing September 10th of 1984 and found in 1986. Basically right where Tim had been trying to coax everybody to look for her. So here she is in the killing fields. Victim number 4 is Janet Doe. She's the second, found in 1991. Her name is Donna Prudhomme, and she was 34 years of age. Now, by 1991, Robert Abel owns and runs a trail riding horse business, which I believe is Stardust Trail Rides. And he owns 2 properties next to the killing fields at this point. And he does eventually end up, I think, buying that particular property. So he was responsible for creating the Saturn rocket because he worked for NASA, as Harry stated. And by 1991, he owned the killing fields. So he didn't technically own those in the beginning. And that's what I discovered through the documentary. Victim number 5, we thought, was Laura Smithers. Now, of course, she was dumped in a completely different location, not where these other bodies were. And that's what kind of set her apart. She went missing on April 3rd, 1997 in Fredswood, Texas, and she was found near a waterway. And that's why I had included her in this particular presentation, because we know the Zodiac had a lot of waterway associations. However, we did actually find out that she is now, it has been claimed that, where's his name? Bill Reese has taken responsibility for Laura Smithers, Jessica Kane, and Kelly Cox. So these are 3 murders that I can remove from the presentation. And I feel fairly secure in doing so because it isn't just a confession where some of these individuals will confess to things they didn't do. He actually was on, I think he was looking at the death penalty for another murder. And it turned out that he was offered to take the death penalty off the table if he showed them where the bodies were to these other victims. And he then did. So he showed them where Laura Smithers was and where Jessica Kane was and Kelly Cox. He accepted responsibility for these murders. So that's kind of an update here on those, even though they're much later, they're in the 90s. Again, that's what sets them apart from the killing fields. The killing fields were in the 80s. I really kind of now pay a lot of attention to this finale letter, the 2005 one, because it specifically said there was other people killing in the 80s. It wasn't
definitely there.
Now we're actually seeing, seeing proof that there were other killers operating at the same time, but they weren't dumping in the same manner. They were hiding the bodies, just like Clyde Hedrick did. So our killer, I believe, for these 3, the Heidi Villarreal, well, actually it's 4. So it's the 2 Jane and Janet Doe, Laura Miller, and Heidi Villarreal 5 were all actually dumped in the killing fields, whereas everybody else was in different locations, but around that area. Let's see. There was a push to get fingerprints. And one of the things I did notice is that they stated at this time when they found Laura Smithers is that it created a huge push for the school systems and for everybody to take DNA samples and swabs. I remember this, like vaguely remember this back in the late 90s, the big push to get your children's fingerprints, to get a DNA swab, to have all of these things on hand in case something happened to them. You could provide that kit to law enforcement in hopes to find them. So there was a huge push for that. The murders then take off again in 1997. I really thought that this was a shoe-in for Jack because we know Jack returned in 1997. I believe that's when his mom died, Flova, or he had gone back to start taking care of her again, 96-ish, 97-ish before she passed away. So he was actually back in Texas. And there may be some murders there that we're going to talk about that he can be held, or the proximity says that it's possible that he is the killer of those individuals, and we'll get to them at that time. It looks like Tim Miller also, he started with Clyde Hedrick as a suspect, and then he moved on to Robert Abel. And evidently he was pounding the crap out of, at least mentally, pounding the crap out of Robert Abel. And he ends up Robert Abel ends up having to file a restraining order against Tim Miller to leave him alone. He's not the killer. I'm not who you're looking for. And at some point in time, Tim Miller actually apologizes to Robert Abel. I believe this is in 2005. I'm not sure if it's before or after. I would love to talk to Tim in regards to some of this, but he hasn't responded as whether or not that letter, the finale letter in 2005, came in before or after his apology to Robert Abel, and maybe after, and that's why he apologized, because the letter now coming from the suspect or killer of his daughter is indicating that Robert Abel's not the devil that the blue fuzz is looking for, kind of thing. So let's see here.
Well, I just wish that we could get some more. When I send you some of this stuff, then you'll understand a little bit more about how the evidence is telling the story. And I got 1986. The names that you're saying were determined later. They apparently government people already knew who was there.
Who Jane and Jenna Doe.
Oh, yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll send it to you because I don't want to confuse the listeners. I've already got it in the books.
Gotcha.
So let's just move, because I don't want to, because you're bringing up so much pertinent information here. And this is how you do this. You make sure you line out everything and then go in and start. For me, it's go in and start decoding.
Right. Well, in May of 1997 is when all of this kind of came together. Sandra Sapal was abducted by knife. Her car was acting up after she ran into a strange man at a convenience store. And all of that sounded very Zodiac-like, right? Manipulation of the car, the convenience store, all of these things seem to run in tandem. So it was purposeful that they made the actual presentation. And at any point, I guess that he says, you've got a flat tire. Can I help you? So again, we know that the Kathleen Johns situation was a tire that had been loosened. The wheel had been loosened from the car. So she was actually put into this guy's truck. It jumped out. And on October 16th of 1997, she identifies Bill Reese. So now Bill Reese is the one I said that had got off of the death penalty by showing them where the bodies were of Laura Smithers, Jessica Kane, and Kelly Cox. Now, I'm not sure if he actually showed him where Kelly Cox was or just accepted culpability for it, but he did show him where Laura Smithers and Jessica Kane was. Now, Bill also leads PD to her body in exchange for death penalty in an unrelated murder case. Police views something like 6,200 pictures belonging to Abel. So they've literally done a search on him, quite like they did with Arthur Lee Allen, and found nothing. In all of his mess of stuff, and one of the guys commented that he had looked through 6,200 pictures and nothing showed anything nefarious on Robert Abel's end. In 2005,
but anyways, keep going.
I know. I'm just putting out. I'm not saying that the media is always correct in what they're saying. This is just what the media is leading us to believe at this point. In 2005,
I'm seeing that he's by then even trying to get help. Robert Abel is. So that's why he's allowing all this to happen. In hindsight, when I see this, he's allowing all this to happen. Like, please arrest me, stop me.
He's trying to help them, and of course and he's
putting himself out there.
But not everybody who offers to help is somebody that's a killer. There are good people out there that can take an interest. I saw the investigative reporter on this Texas killing fields. She kept clippings. She followed everything. She ran around injecting herself into the case. Nobody called her a murderer. So that's what I'm saying. People can't keep using the fact that just because he assisted, gave his horses and gave him, freedom to his property to say that makes him a killer. I really just don't honestly believe. Yes, some do inject themselves into the case so that they can follow what's going on. There are people who do that have no relation to the murder whatsoever. Ooh, let's welcome Nolan to the show.
Hello, Nolan. I see the side.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry I'm late.
That's okay. We're just finishing up with the killing fields, and then we're going to hop over to the follow-up on Peter Wilson. So basically in 2005, Tim Miller apologizes to Abel, and then Abel, for whatever reason, purportedly commits either suicide or his quad breaks down on the train tracks and he is hit by a train and killed. So again, we're not sure, was that self-homicide or was that just mechanical failure? Right. I mean, there's got to be something going on there.
Today.
Mine?
Yeah.
Carol's.
It's fluffier, yeah.
It is fluffy. It is rather fluffy. So in July 19th of 2005 is when the accident happens with Robert Abel, and by September 2005, the finale letter. I think I just answered that myself now. So the apology was given obviously in 2005, but previous to him dying. And then September 2005 is when the finale letter comes. It ruled out Clyde Hedrick as a possible author. Okay, so I'm sorry. Clyde Hedrick, at one point in time, Tim Miller had a private investigator, I believe his name was Bill Young, who came out and visited and spent a couple days with me going over the presentation that I have on the Zodiac versus Tim Miller's letter. And then he asked me to do a handwriting analysis of Clyde Hedrick's handwriting, and that was provided by Clyde's ex-wife. So I did have access to look at Clyde's handwriting, and I could rule Clyde out as the Zodiac. And I think that once I made the connections between the 2005 finale letter and the Zodiac, that's when Tim started trying to figure out if he could put Clyde Hedrick here in California, which I don't know that he ultimately could by any means. But after doing the handwriting, I know that I can rule Clyde out as the possible author of the Zodiac letters, but you cannot rule out Zodiac wrote Tim's finale letter, which I honestly believe that he really did. There was also XXX, I'm going to call it XXX videos or DVDs found at Laura Miller's makeshift grave in the killing fields. And I found similar DVDs, at least I thought somebody actually brought it to my attention that we might have been sitting on CDs, not DVDs. And that's why we couldn't get them to play in the computer. We would have had to have put them. Yeah. So, and I'm upset because I never tried playing it as a CD, but it could be very likely that that's what we were sitting on. And it may have had information on it that we could have used to some degree. I
still have Genesis, the stuff that I ended up getting back, twice. I'm going to have to look in that again, see what I can find with the CDs or DVDs, because I'm wondering if that's there or some of the files that I know Dennis had shared with me. So I'm going to just look.
Okay.
Because
I know that Dennis had it. I know we tried to run it through a couple different computers at my house. He tried running it too, and we couldn't get anything to play. So that is a valid, either our technology had surpassed that particular CD, DVD, or we were literally sitting on something that was just a vocal recording. It was just audio. It wasn't actually a video. Who knows? I know that Tim Miller turned his over with the letter, I believe, to law enforcement, League City PD, and all of that stuff has gone missing. So that's c'est la vie. Now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to stop this share and share our next screen. Present, share.
Hello again. Just in case I went off the screen for a second.
Right. I need it up for myself. There we go. And let's go with that one. Woo-hoo. All right. This is a whole lot of information. Boy, I got 2 packages from Mr. Wilson in regards to his case, and everything just got extremely more interesting. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what is going on in our world that people can get away with this? Anyways, we have identified him as Peter E. Wilson. I've just asked him for his middle name to find out what his middle name is. It could very well be Einen Lau, right? I mean, we'll see how it comes out. But he was 31 years of age in 1996. From what I could tell, he was working for hospitals as a laboratory assistant while going to Stanford University. His date of birth, 9/30/1964. He claims, and I asked him specifically about the different name changes and the legal name change and the different birth dates that were being produced in the media, because I thought maybe the media had been the ones to get that wrong. But it turns out that he said that he claims that Officer Yor intentionally fabricated half a dozen stories using different names and birth dates. Yor claimed that the county jail used an old computer system that would not accept changes, so the birth date was entered incorrectly to reflect 1954. And because the system did not accept changes, that placed his birth date as 1954 and could not be changed at that point. In one of the, what's that?
That doesn't sound right.
No, but you've got a police officer who's telling the courts don't know the difference, right? They don't know what's going on in the police department. He could say anything he wanted.
Yeah.
But yeah, he tried to say that it accidentally got entered incorrectly and now it can't be changed because the system doesn't allow for changes. That makes no sense at all to me.
Right. You would think you could update all the time.
Right. So basically, one of the interviews that I saw by the private investigator was a friend of Wilson's named Claude. I actually saw two, a Sharif and a Claude. Both of these individuals lived at the previous house. They rented rooms in a previous house to Hak Ju Kim's house, but kept in contact with each other even afterwards. So they would still hang out, get together for food, and they were still good friends even after they parted ways, or good acquaintances, as one would have put it. And one of those friends, Claude, had indicated that he believes that Wilson is from Canada, or at least that was the perception. So we don't have him coming from a foreign country, as suggested, which would now make sense as to why he claims a race as being white. Now, William Morrill Coleman is not black per Wilson, but didn't look white either, even though the police report indicates that he was a white male. And Wilson said he could be any other race, but he was approximately 55 years of age. His background was a former dishwasher at Mesaluno in Mountain View, California, and he rented a room from Kim for $450 a month. They did take a rape kit, blood, and DNA from Coleman. It was tested, and after testing it, for whatever reason, Linda Ruth Condren filed a motion in court to exclude the evidence of finding semen and sperm on Kim, and withheld the test results of the DNA testing on the specimen and the sperm from the defense, as well as the test results on Coleman, which just make absolutely no sense. I mean,
and
we should be putting...
That's unethical.
Completely unethical. I mean, your whole job is to present a good case, not a what you want to case. And it appears as though she was looking to remove the thought or idea from the jury altogether that there could be a third party involved with this. And I just don't even see on the evidence that they have how they could have came to a conclusion that Wilson was guilty, because none of it is really making sense after going back through that. And I'm going to show you guys how. So Coleman denied saying Kim had been dead for 4 to 5 hours on the 911 call until the tape was played. Then he lied several times about why he said that. So I found that interesting. I have read his transcripts. It is in here. I will flash through them so that you can pause your video as we go through in lieu of trying to read all 28 pages. But you will find that the testimony from Coleman didn't really insinuated all that Wilson was the killer. All it really insinuated was that he knocked on my door once and said he found Kim. But Coleman was home before Wilson was. So Wilson comes home, finds her, tries to get Coleman's attention. Coleman isn't answering the door. Wilson basically barges in and opens the door up, and there's Coleman standing fully dressed, shoes, pants, shirt, sweatshirt, in a house where he's not allowed to wear shoes. Got to remember, she's Asian. There's no shoes allowed in the house, but he's standing in his bedroom fully dressed with shoes on after what he claimed was one single knock with no words from Coleman, or from Wilson, sorry. So that gets even more interesting.
Quick question.
Yes.
Why was Coleman on ankle bracelet?
I think that he went on an ankle bracelet in order to track him while the trial or while the investigation was going on.
So evidently he still was kind of a suspect then.
I think so. And I think when they lost that opportunity, when he cut that bracelet and ran off to Mexico, that they now lost their other they needed to pin it on somebody, basically.
Yeah.
They don't have the other suspect. Yeah.
Sarah Dutra.
It would be interesting.
McNabney's wife killed herself in Florida. They had to pin it on someone, so they pinned it on Sarah Dutra.
Gotcha. Yeah, they're looking for somebody to settle that case out on. Either way, I mean, it doesn't scream justice. It doesn't scream the truth to manipulate things to get that case to have an end result that you want versus the truth.
Well, I think that to interject at this point, if you'd like.
Go for it.
Okay, you asked me to just try to do my thing like I would do, and no offense, pretend you're Dennis, and then enter the names that I do and try to see what I come up with. I kept on coming up with William Morrow, as in a company, a publisher company that ends up being bought by the Hearst people in 1981. I got 1881 in my head, long story. But anyways, in 1981. So I said, okay, why is this coming up over and over and over again when I'm trying to do my searches? Then I find out that they had a Zodiac author trying to get their versions of who the Zodiac is around when Dennis and you and I are online trying to get their books sold. So I said, this is weird. Okay. I'm trying to remember who the author is. So let's just get past that. I said, okay, I think I'm seeing something that there's, just like this guy, Officer Yore, has been on TV numerous times for being wrong and, doing shows on cases from that area. I've seen them. So anyways, now the other update is since the place of Canada is brought up, and Wilson thinks something about the friend to Canada. I put
no,
that
Wilson is from Canada. His friend says that he believes Wilson is from Canada.
Okay, that's what I came up with. Okay, my apologies to the families, but there is a William Coleman, who had been in Canada, was living in Canada, but was also having something, in the United States. And his wife is with a very Korean sounding name, but both of them, I believe, are now deceased.
No.
To be
Wilson is from Canada, not Coleman. I have no knowledge where Coleman comes from.
So that's what I was finding out. Okay, Coleman. Okay, so Wilson is supposed to be from Canada.
Yes, and that was based on an interview that a private investigator had with his friend Claude. Okay. And this was actually years after. I want to say this might even have been on the second trial that this investigator actually got involved and spoke to him. And Claude had no idea. He hadn't talked to Wilson in a very long time and had no idea that he was up on murder charges. But both Claude and Sharif said there's absolutely no way he could kill somebody. He's like very docile, very amiable. He's very nice, quiet individual that doesn't get angry about pretty much anything. And that's quite the opposite of Hak-Ju Kim, who we hear, is jumping on the sides of truck and screaming at men.
Okay. Wilson was 31, but he was still in school. Was he a graduate student?
I haven't asked that question. I just know that he might have been finishing up whatever his studies were at that point in time, or maybe he went to college late in the game. I have no idea.
Yeah, that's pretty young. I mean, old for a Stanford student. Most people that go to Stanford go there right out of high school and graduate within 4 or 5 years.
Well, most people, but that doesn't mean all people.
There's exceptions.
I went back to college at 35. Not everybody plays the socialistic game of school, before going and getting their careers. But all right. So Officer Yore told the prosecutor that Coleman fled the country, that he cut off his ankle bracelet and fled to Mexico. And again, I'm not sure. That may be another follow-up question that I need to ask, if that was just pertaining to the investigation and they wanted to be able to track him, or if he was on parole or had some other type of arrest that required him to wear a bracelet. Wilson's court-appointed attorney, Gregory Parasco, retired in 2000, and Mr. Wilson claims that he was ineffective because, number one, he failed to present expert testimony on the forensics in Wilson's behalf by hiring independent pathologists instead of relying on cross-examination of the prosecutor's witnesses. So he did no favors to his client because he didn't have any independent testing done to refute what it was that the DA came up with. It says that Kim's nude body should have been the central point of examination and investigation for a proper defense. Kim, a 59-year-old, divorced for 20 years, never dated a man, found half naked, clothes and underclothes torn, seminal fluid on her upper thighs and sperm in her vagina, was killed and raped. And Parasco refused to petition the court to test the untested rape kit, which would have yielded the male DNA. So there's his second failure. He should have petitioned the court to have that DNA ran.
Yes, that's crazy.
I know. I'm trying to
put both the defense and the prosecution are lame.
Thank you. And number 3, he failed to investigate the state's blood evidence and have an independent testing of the DNA collected from Wilson and the DNA from the crime scene, which would have yielded the degradation levels of the DNA to show it was from a single source, that it was taken from a vial and planted at the scene, which is something that he later found out through independent testing on his own by sending the results, both of his, because of course the DA ran these profiles and found that it was a match, but failed to even mention, I'm assuming their forensic experts failed to even mention that the degradation was identical. And this wasn't something that Mr. Wilson found out until I want to say 2017 or 2018, that it was actually identical, and that's impossible. All right. Exclusion of the rape kit. I do want to read some of the trial transcripts from the exclusionary stuff that Linda Condren, or the DA, because I find this stuff absolutely astonishing. So it starts out, Miss Condren, yes, Your Honor, the people's first motion pertains to the exclusion of evidence relating to a swab and the finding of a single sperm on the body of the victim. We're moving to exclude this evidence because it's irrelevant. It's what? It's what?
The judge should have saw right through that and said no.
And it gets interesting because I've got the court's response as well. It says it doesn't tend to prove any matter in issue in this trial or to even make any matter more or less likely. The reason I suggest this is for the following. The evidence will be, and this is by way of offer of proof, that the sperm could be from the defendant or any other person on the planet.
Bless
Sorry.
you. Just in case. Bless you.
Right? Well, presumably male person on the planet, that it could also be the result of contamination. What? Are people just walking around flinging sperm and semen everywhere?
On dead bodies? Yeah, come on.
I'm absolutely floored reading this. There is no evidence of sexual assault in this case.
What?
Okay. And that the lack of other sperm, that this sperm could have been deposited before the assault, which led to the victim's death, that is by a day or more, and there's no logical nexus at all which connects this to the murder in this case, or that suggests that someone other than the defendant deposited the sperm and was the killer. So why didn't you test it?
Or why did you want it admitted?
You'd want it admitted. Yeah, if it matched your suspect.
If you say it's going to be him, then that helps your case.
Exactly. It says, if relevant at all, the relevance is absolutely minimal, and under 352 exclusion would be, ooh, what's a 352 exclusion? Because I just told you about the article that I found. She did the exclusionary rule or some, okay, I'm going to come back to that. I'm glad I just saw it.
Different type. Exclusionary rules in regard to a search.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, this is the exclusion in its dictionary meaning, not under the legal exclusionary rule meaning.
Gotcha.
So,
okay.
Yeah, but so she's normally it's defense that tries to exclude evidence, but she's the prosecutor trying to exclude evidence which would tend to incriminate the accused.
Incriminate
or be
go either way.
Yeah, exculpatory. But she doesn't want it in because it is potentially exculpatory, and that's why she doesn't want it in. So what's the judge say? How does the judge respond?
Well, it says, and this is what she says, if relevant at all, the relevance is absolutely minimal, and under 352 exclusion would be appropriate because it would lead to true confusion and diverting the attention of the jury and exorbitant consumption of time. It's going to take too much time to tell the truth.
I can't believe she's thrown that. It's a really weak argument.
It's not even an argument. It's
in
complete
352,
BS.
That would probably be the California Evidence Code.
Gotcha. Well, so the court's response is defense position. Mr. Periscu, well, I don't think it is an exorbitant amount of time, but I would like to have the opportunity to defer this until Wednesday. So that's the only objection that this public defender makes. I'd like to reserve the thought on that until Wednesday. This is what the court orders. So I go to page 7, and the exclusion of the evidence of the sperm, that will be deferred. Now, the second one is motion for the jury to view it. That's been granted.
Wow.
I don't even know what to say. I like you. And the judge goes on at one point to say that this isn't a matter of time. I have all the time in the world to hear the proper evidence on this case.
Right.
So if your argument is time, that's not valid, he says in one of the transcripts.
Right.
But that's her argument is it's going to divert the attention of the jury. It's going to take too much time and it's going to be confusing. What? I don't even get it. I can't put words to this right now. I'm just feeling like this is probably one of the most corrupt individuals I've ever met in my entire life. Well, not even met.
And the judge should have called her on it. Or the defense attorney, or both.
Exactly. Somebody should have said, my client has rights to know these things should be known.
Or
now,
this is too, because the judge, he doesn't want to get overturned on appeal.
Right. But if everybody's got it locked up, zip it, lock it, stuff it in your pocket.
That's why I want to know if there was an actual appeal, because that's an appealable issue right there. The decision to not let the jury see that evidence, that's a red flag.
I think that the inclusion, and maybe in the 1998 trial, they did talk about a third-party culpability is what caused the hung jury. So now she's just trying to avoid another hung jury by saying, let's not confuse them. That's not confusing them. That was half the people believing that he was innocent in the first trial. Right. A hung jury, right? That means that they all couldn't agree?
Right. It doesn't have to be half. It could be just one juror. But we don't know, unless we actually saw the verdict or the vote. But
how would I go about looking up this stuff?
Juries will refuse to convict.
Would or should these files be available public? This trial, these proceedings?
Yeah, the transcript should be of the trial. Yeah.
You just have to obviously pay for them and get them to go find them for you, right?
Yeah.
Because it's 30 years old.
The court reporter is. What department? We know the department.
I have the court reporter's name at the bottom of all these transcripts.
Yeah. So question is that person still alive and still working as a court reporter? Right. But they're archived too. So the county should save them.
They have to keep it until all options for retrial are done. They have to keep all these files, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the next exclusion being done by the district attorney's office, and it's a cigarette butt that's found in the basement near Kim's body. Now, I have just reached out to Mr. Wilson to find out if anybody in the house smoked. I wouldn't be shocked if he came back and said Coleman did. But obviously, for that cigarette to be mentioned, that means that it wasn't Hawk Ju Kim that was smoking, and her family probably would have testified that she didn't. But this is excluded once again because it may possibly prove third-party involvement. So the court says, next issue, Ms. Condren, Your Honor, there is evidence that there is a cigarette butt found in the cellar. It has no probative value. I don't know if counsel intends to introduce it, but it is the people's motion to exclude this evidence.
God.
I'm totally beside myself. Ms. Condren says, exclude evidence of a cigarette butt that was found in the cellar of the home. That's the area where the victim's body was found. And Mr. Parascu says, well, I think it's relevant. And again, I think it's connected to the sperm thing. I mean, there's evidence of potential third-party involvement, whether there is evidence of culpability of some other person who may have been responsible. And I think we can take it all up on discussion on Wednesday. Did he not come to? Yes. Did he not come to court prepared? Like,
no, and it's going to exclude, and it's clear the victim didn't smoke. Correct.
Say that again.
It's clear that Wilson didn't smoke, and it's clear that the victim didn't smoke.
Correct.
So it's either Coleman or a third party.
Or a third party. Yes. So go ahead, Harriet.
The cigarette butt. I think we're all making that point. This would definitely have DNA on it. So, test it and see whose DNA is there. It's either Kim's or Wilson's or Coleman's or somebody else's.
Unknown third party, yeah.
And we're going to get to that.
Why get rid of that? That's going to...
Okay.
It could prove one way or another.
The missing car that was in the driveway. Weren't there any neighbors or anyone that saw who came and went in that vehicle? And didn't you leave with that person in that vehicle?
Yes, and that's something I don't know when we're going to hit it, but I'll talk about it now since you brought that up. Right. So basically, when Mr. Wilson gets home at approximately 2 minutes to 2, and he finds out that the taxi cab driver's on the wrong side of town, gets that rerouted and shows up at 2:04 p.m. or whatever it is to pick Mr. Wilson up. Mr. Wilson indicated when he got home, he saw a vehicle parked in the driveway with a car cover over the top of it, and Miss Kim's car, her BMW, was gone. So that would suggest that somebody came to Miss Kim's house, they got into her vehicle, and they left. But he did not see her when he entered the back door, which comes into his room directly. He doesn't have to go through the house. He comes into his room, he gathers his stuff up, he leaves out the same door he came in. So he never actually entered the main part of the house to know whether or not Kim was home, but he believed she wasn't because her car was not in the driveway. Further testimony of Coleman indicates that when he gets home at 8:30 at night that evening, which would have been Saturday night at 8:30 p.m. Now, mind you, he's being treated in a hospital right now for the damage done to his hand by the taxi cab driver in San Francisco. So he is not even home when Coleman shows up. Coleman testifies when he got home that the car, Miss Kim's BMW, was in the driveway. So now the only two people, while Kim is alive, or purportedly alive, because she may have been killed by somebody else and not Coleman at all. We don't know this, right?
Was the other car gone when Coleman got
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And in the trial transcripts of Coleman in the first trial, Coleman indicates that Miss Kim did not have a car cover, never covered her car. You could look at the paint and see that it's sun damage, that she never covered her car. And the family and everybody else testified to the fact that Miss Kim did not have a car cover. So we definitely have a third person that is there on that particular day in the presence of Miss Kim, and her car is back by the time. So I would think that we could naturally presume that when Wilson got home and saw that car covered in the driveway, which other people had seen, including the cab driver. So the cab driver testified to the fact that when he arrived, that the car was covered in the driveway. So now we know that it wasn't her BMW, but the BMW was gone. Wilson is gone until 2:00 in the morning before he finally makes it home. So it wasn't like he manipulated anything by covering her car to make it look suspiciously like somebody else's or something, because he wouldn't have been there in time to remove that when the BMW was seen by Coleman at 8:30 p.m. that evening.
Correct.
Absolutely insane. So Paraskew, let's go back to the public defender. He fails to argue significance adequately. So he says, I've read and reviewed the points and authorities in support of the admissibility of the third-party culpability evidence, and I can add to the list of physical items. I presume, this leaf is included in the, and I think this is coming from Miss Condren at this point. She's wanting to include the leaf that is stuck to Kim's buttocks. Ms. Condren says the leaf is not included in the motion to exclude, Your Honor, because the leaf has other significance independent of third-party culpability. Independent of third-party culpability. The court says, all right. So in other words, the people plan to introduce the leaf. Ms. Condren, absolutely. The court, all right. So that issue is not before me. You understand that, Mr. Paraskew? Mr. Paraskew says, I assumed it was just the cigarette butt and sperm evidence that was being excluded. The court, I am just reading your moving papers, and it has quite a few statements on this leaf. And Mr. Paraskew says, well, because I think that's part and parcel of why the other items are all important. In other words, when you put the whole package of evidence together, the court says, all right, I understand. Mr. Paraskew, I was trying to illustrate to the court the significance. The court, all right, I didn't understand that issue. All right, you've read and reviewed the defendant's, let's see, motion, Miss Condren, and the court is actually asking Miss Condren if she's read it. Let's see, Miss Condren, I have indeed. And the court, let me say that I do not believe that it's appropriate to exclude it on the basis of time consumption. There's no need to argue that. If it's admissible, how long it takes is totally irrelevant. And obviously the court will make whatever time it takes to receive that evidence. That's not the issue. The issue is whether or not it is going to be confusing and therefore lead to issues that the jury shouldn't be properly concerning itself with. Now, what is your response, Miss Condren? She says, yes, Your Honor, and I have apparently some pages have fallen out of my transcript because it popped open in the box. If you'll just give me a moment. Oh, Anyways,
Okay.
she says, Your Honor, I need to respond briefly to some of the factual assertions. First of all, the counsel argues, or excuse me, counsel suggests that the evidence is that the leaf suggests that she may have been disrobed and dressed during the assault or before her death. In fact, the evidence is uncontradicted that her shirt was removed after physical assault, causing the blood evidence, which we have. So there's really no basis in any of the evidence for that assertion. Now, that doesn't make sense to me because who cares about her shirt? It's found on her butt.
And yeah, and also, why is the leaf so much more important than the sperm and the cigarette butt?
Well, what they are trying to say is that, and I think that it played into the DA's game in regards to the leaf and how it ended up attached to Miss Kim's body before or after, as if it slipped down her underwear and her pants while she was struggling with these people, rather than her pants were pulled down, underwear pulled down, a leaf stuck to the bottom, then her pants and underwear pulled back up. So I don't know where that goes to as far as the transcripts are concerned, because I'm just getting to read. This is like what the preliminary motions, the motions in limine that they're discussing.
Yeah. Can I say something real quick?
Yes.
When I hear stuff like that about leaves on the butt and etc., to me, and I've done so many of these types of cases, it's suggesting that something happened to her outside.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Then she was brought in. And then
no. The leaf that was attached to her butt matches leaves that are found in the basement. So it's just a lack of a cleanup. It's an old basement with a bunch of junk in it, and it matches the other leaves that are in the basement. So the act and the crime happened in the basement, and so did the rape. And that's where that leaf was collected when her pants and underwear were pulled down and then pulled back up. It even said that her pants and her underwear were torn. Her shirt was torn. Well, her shirt was removed and gone.
How did the leaves get in the basement? And
well, it could be in a window.
If a leaf is indoors and off a tree, they tend to dry up rather quickly.
Right.
And disintegrate or whatever. They crumple up. They don't stay.
Yeah, I don't know. I did read some of the evidence in regards to the leaves, and it stated, first off, it was very interesting to note that the leaf found on her buttocks was a match to other leaves found in the basement. Then the DA sends out an investigator to go back to the property, but long after it's now owned by somebody else. And he takes 2 samples of leaves, one of them from a tree on the property, another one from a bush. But as he's taking that sample from the bush, the owner actually says to him, I planted that myself.
So
that's not something you want to take. Yeah. But he took that anyways, and then tried to claim that the leaf found on her butt had no match to any leaves on the property, when A, he only took 2 types of leaves, when he didn't test all the rest of the other trees and bushes around, and he took leaves from something he was specifically told by the new owner that she had planted, and it wouldn't have been there or existed at the time of the murder. Who does this? I don't understand what their game is here or what they're trying to play with that.
And
by
why
any
would
means.
You do that after the fact?
Right. Well, after the fact.
Judgment. This is all.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not sure what their angle is for this.
I'm going to finish
off this. I got 1 minute. I'm going to finish off this slide real quick, but it says, first of all, the counsel argues, or excuse me, counsel suggests that the evidence is that the leaf suggests that she may have been disrobed and dressed during the assault on her or before her death. In fact, the evidence is uncontradicted that her shirt was removed after the physical assault, causing the blood evidence, which we have. So there's really no basis in any of the evidence for that assertion. Second one, which was the most concern to the people, which was, he says that further evidence, circumstantial evidence of a third party presence, if you will. And the court says that's the key. Ms. Condren says, right. The court says, that's where I want you to focus. The court wants you to focus on the third-party culpability, but she's doing everything she can to exclude any information that's going to be helpful in that manner. So claims irrefutable evidence that the shirt was removed after physical assault, but to hide evidence rather than due to rape. I don't even know how to take that. Taking her shirt to hide evidence when there's a dead body seems rather stupid unless the killer bled on her shirt, right? I mean, why take her shirt to conceal evidence when there's a dead body laying there? You didn't take the major part of the evidence, which is the dead body.
So again, rush to judgment, and they're trying to hurry up, and that's what it's
She's doing everything she can to play a dirty game here, is all I see.
So who are they protecting?
A third party is a number one defense to most people who are arrested for a crime. If they didn't do it, obviously that means there's a third person. And that's your only defense. I didn't do it. Look at the forensics. It's going to lead you to somebody else, not to me.
It's just adding up to there is the third party, but wow.
I can't understand how you can exclude the sperm and the cigarette butt.
I don't understand any of it. But this is it, you guys. We're at our 50-minute mark here. I want to thank you guys. We'll pick this up next week and continue on with this follow-up because there's lots more to come. It gets even better. Everybody have a wonderful weekend, and thank you guys for being here.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Oh,